Welcome back to ASA English Podcast, where we dive into fascinating stories from all walks of life. I'm your host, Mark, and today we're buzzing with excitement. Literally. If you've ever wondered how bees are thriving right in the middle of the city, you're in for a treat. I am joined by Amelia, an urban beekeeper who's going to take us behind the scenes of what it's like to care for these incredible creatures in the heart of our bustling cities. Welcome, Amelia.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark. I'm really excited to share a little bit of my world with you and your listeners.
So let's start with something that might surprise a lot of people. How did you get into urban beekeeping? It sounds so niche. What made you want to start keeping bees in the city?
I totally get it. Beekeeping in the city is definitely not something that everyone thinks about. I have always had an affinity for nature and wildlife. A few years ago, I attended a workshop on urban beekeeping. What suddenly got me interested in this was realizing that it's something I could do. I was fascinated by how bees can actually thrive in an urban environment. Of course, they're incredible at adapting, and the variety of flowers and plants in the city provides a unique food source. For example, my first hive's roof was surrounded by lavender and wildflowers, which the bees loved completely. Moreover, urban beekeeping can play a huge role in helping maintain biodiversity in the city.
That's amazing. And I can already tell this will be a really interesting conversation. But tell us, what's a day in the life of an urban beekeeper like?
Oh, it's definitely never the same. I usually start early, around 7 a.m. before the city gets too hectic. My hives are located on the rooftops of a couple of buildings downtown. The first thing I do is head up there, suit up in my protective gear, and I mean full gear. You never know when one of the bees might get a little too curious. Actually, the buzzing of the bees is really soothing, but I always listen carefully because their behavior tells me a lot. I check the hives for signs of health, make sure the colony has enough food, and look for any signs of pests. For instance, last spring, I noticed that a hive was becoming overcrowded because the bees had filled almost every frame with honey, so I had to add another box to accommodate their growth. It's like having a little inspection every day.
That sounds very peaceful, yet also pretty intense. Just a quick reminder, and don't forget to ask your questions in the comment section. We'd love to answer them. Okay, Amelia, what do you think is the hardest part of urban beekeeping? I can imagine that there are some challenges living so close to a city.
Yeah, it definitely has its challenges. One big issue is pollution. The air quality in cities can impact the health of the bees, especially because they're so sensitive to it. For example, I once had to move a hive because there were too many nearby construction projects and the dust was affecting the bees. Another challenge is that there isn't always enough forage for them. Bees require a wide variety of plants to ensure they are getting the nutrients they need. So I work with local gardeners and urban farms to ensure there is a consistent supply of flowers and herbs. In fact, I recently teamed up with a local florist who planted bee-friendly flowers around the city. It's a little like coordinating a small ecosystem in the middle of a concrete jungle.
That's cool. And you're not done there once the hive is healthy. I'm sure there's plenty of educating the community to be done as well, correct?
Oh yeah, this is one of my favorite things to do, getting to teach people about how integral bees are to our food system. A lot of people have no idea that 1/3 of what we eat depends on bees for pollination, and when they learn that, they become a much better supporter of keeping bees. Like last year, I partnered with one local school where we established a bee garden right at the top of their roof and put in a hive there. The children really enjoyed taking part in that, and we also conducted a honey harvest where we made them partake in gathering honey and taste testing it. It's amazing to see kids' faces light up when they learn that bees can be found right on their rooftops.
It must feel so rewarding to be able to share that with others. What about the rewards on a personal level? What do you love most about beekeeping?
Honestly, there's nothing like the first time you harvest honey from a hive you've nurtured. The moment you take out those golden, dripping frames, it feels like all your hard work has paid off. Last summer, I harvested honey from one of my hives, and it had a rich, almost fruity flavor because of the nearby fruit trees. But even more than that, I love the connection with the bees. There's something truly magical about being around them. Their sense of community is inspiring. Theirs is like perfect teamwork, always working together for the greater good of the hive. Once I recall, after a swarm left one of my hives, I was able to collect them and relocate them into a new box, saving the entire colony.
That would be amazing. I also hear that there's some honey magic there too. Can you explain that? Is the honey actually affected differently based on the location of the hives?
Oh, totally. The taste will vary depending on the surrounding plants. There is some light, floral honey, and others richer, almost like caramel. The honey coming from my downtown hives has a little kick to it due to all the lemon trees and flowers around it. It's funny, actually. People try it and they say it tastes like summer. It's always a fun surprise.
That sounds amazing. Okay, before we go, what would you say to someone thinking about starting their urban beekeeping journey?
I would say, start small and do your research. There are so many great online resources and beginners classes available. Find a local beekeeping club and don't hesitate to ask questions. For example, I will never forget reaching out to a local beekeeper for guidance about where to put my hives. Patience is the other virtue in this game. The colony grows slowly and starts to produce honey. But there's no substitute for getting to see a hive come to life and begin to produce absolute worth it.
Great advice. Amelia, thanks so much for taking us into the world of urban beekeeping. I feel as though I learned so much already, and surely our listeners will be buzzing with curiosity too.
Thank you, Mark. I enjoyed talking with you, and hopefully your listeners will be inspired to discover more about bees in their cities.
To listeners, thanks so much for tuning into the ASA English Podcast. If you have enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave us a review so we can keep bringing you more amazing stories. Stay curious and keep exploring till next time. Affinity, a natural liking or connection to something. Example, his affinity for classical music was apparent when he played Beethoven on the piano. Biodiversity, the variety of plant and animal life in a given habitat. Example, urban beekeeping contributes to maintaining biodiversity by supporting pollination in cities. Forage, the process of seeking and gathering food or supplies. Example, bees forage on city flowers for nectar to make honey. Pollination, the movement of pollen from one flower to another, facilitating reproduction. Example, bees are critical to pollination, which is crucial for the generation of many agricultural products. Ecosystem, a community of living organisms and their environment. Example, the sea coral reefs are a delicate ecosystem where every species manages the system that maintains its balance. Harvest, gathering crops or products, especially those grown or produced. Example, the community participated in the honey harvest, collecting the sweet fruits of their toil. Vital, absolutely necessary or essential for the success or survival of something. Example, it is vital to drink plenty of water, especially during intense physical activity. Curiosity, a strong desire to learn or know something. Example, Amelia's curiosity about bees in the city sparked her interest in urban beekeeping. Resilience, the ability to recover quickly from difficulties or adapt to challenges. Example, her resilience in overcoming setbacks at work earned her a promotion.